Signatures on documentation are one of those areas that is really easy to comply, but at the same time, there's a lot of failures out there, and there's a lot of documentation, a lot of information, because actually it's not too terribly difficult to comply with the signature requirements. And really, what does it come down to? Well, there's a lot of do's and of course a lot of don'ts. Now, is this only for Medicare? Well, yes and a resounding no. Yeah, we're going to talk about the Medicare guidelines and what they require and what that looks like. But the truth of the matter is the vast majority of the providers out there, the insurance providers out there, really follow Medicare guidelines in this regard. And it gives you something to stand behind that makes it abundantly clear. Although, like anything else, we always encourage you to check the provider manual for the particular insurance that you may have a question about. But again, the vast majority of the time, these guidelines are really going to help you and protect you in a lot of the signature problem cases, if you will. The biggest thing is this. First of all, let me go through some don'ts, because that's the easiest place to start. And we'll talk about the do's, what you can do and what that all looks like. So first of all, don't have an illegible signature. Can you overcome that? Well, possibly. But if you have an illegible signature on your note, then that's going to be problematic and create additional work for you, which really isn't necessary. The second is this. You don't want to have any kind of initials without clear identification either. You want to make sure you do sign the note. You wouldn't believe how often that happens, that the provider, the physician, just forgets to sign the note. Again, you can't also use the words signature on file. So don't just at the bottom of your note add the term signature on file. That is not going to work. It doesn't fly. Don't do that. The last one is don't use a stamp. They don't allow you to use a stamp. So if you got a stamp with your signature and you just want to pop it on your at the bottom of your notes, don't do that. It's not acceptable, even with an attestation form, even with any kind of other document that you may want to try to submit that says it's okay. Just don't do any of those things. Now, what does that mean you can do? Well, the easiest way to do it is if your notes are typed and you have printed your name on the note, you sign your name over the top of that printed name. It's really abundantly clear. That's the easiest way to give a handwritten signature on a note that makes it very, very clear. And then you don't have to worry about your signature being illegible. You don't have to worry about it being initials or whatever, but it's got to be over your note. Now, if you have impeccable handwriting and it's really easy to read your signature, then of course you can just sign the note without the typed, or Medicare will say printed, but my guess is if your signature is fairly sloppy, so is your handwriting. So again, you want to make sure it's abundantly clear who the provider is that's signing the note, who actually is doing the documentation. So that's how you do it. Typed, signed over the top of that, or initialed over the top of that. If your handwriting is impeccable, then you can do your full name signed or your first initial and last name signed as well. But your handwriting better be fantastic. Other things that you can do. It's okay to do electronic signatures that meet the guidelines. Now, what does that mean? Okay, well, this is the question that we got last week, and the question is, okay, what really is a properly formatted electronic signature? Well, there's a lot of things that go into that, but the biggest thing is this. It's that the signature is safeguarded. The note is safeguarded to prevent someone else from signing your name to a note. Now, a lot of this can be accomplished through your electronic health records system. Most likely, they have a system in place that will allow you to protect your signature and allow you to sign that note after entering a password. Check with your provider on that. Otherwise, locking down all of your notes in regards to everything that happens there, and make sure that they're password protected and someone else can't get into that documentation in order to indicate that they're the ones, or say on your behalf that they're signing the note. That is not acceptable. It has to be the provider signing the note. Now, what does that signature actually look like? Of course, it cannot just be your typed name. That's really not good enough because Medicare has said if you just have the typed name, it's like having it printed. You need to make sure that it's signed over the top of that. So what is an electronic signature? Medicare doesn't really exactly specify, but almost all of the carriers out there, NGS and Palmero and many of the others have kind of laid out what do these guidelines look like. here's really what it requires, and it's really just this simple. Again, make sure that it's locked down and nobody else has access to it. But then it can be just simply the phrase electronically signed by, and then your name. So electronically signed by John Doe, signed by John Doe, authenticated by John Doe, seized by John Doe. What it can't be is something like transcribed by John Doe. That's not good enough, because what that indicates more or less that somebody else transcribed your notes for you, and they're the ones that are signing the note and not you as the provider. Attested by John Doe, approved by, completed by, verified by, finalized by, validated by, generated by, confirmed by. Those are acceptable terminologies to use before putting your protected name after that. So again, it would be electronically signed by John Doe. Now that's the vast majority. That's the easiest one to make sure that you remain in compliance, is just put electronically signed by and your name. Now some of those have, you have some softwares that have like digital signatures, if you will, that clearly indicate who you are in a printed format, and maybe it's a graphical representation of your exact signature, or just a simple, if you will, script text font representation of a signature like yours, or something along those. But as long as that is protected and it clearly indicates who the provider is and that you're the only one that can attach that signature to the bottom of the note, then you're okay. So no stamps, no unsigned documentation, no illegible signatures without clear identification about who you are. And after that, it starts to open up the possibilities, as long as the note is signed, either electronically or by hand, and it clearly identifies exactly who you are in a legible format. Other than that, you have to attest through an attestation form that Medicare gives you the very script for, or it has to be done through a signature log. Again, printed name and a mimic of your signature that was utilized in the documentation. Hopefully this helps you out. Get your signatures more compliant on your notes, and we'll catch you next week.